Welcome to this explainer from Forge College. So, you're getting ready to deploy on Solana, right? If you've ever felt that sudden spike of panic, the sweaty palms, or, the intense imposter syndrome right before pushing code to a live blockchain, well, you're in the exact right place. Today, we're taking that deployment anxiety and turning it into a bulletproof, rock-solid engineering blueprint. Let's get right into it. I mean, think about it. What actually happens when you press that deploy button? Because let's be real, just crossing your fingers, taking a deep breath, and hoping for the best? Yeah, that is not an engineering strategy, especially not on a live immutable network like Solana. When real value is literally on the line, we need actual guarantees, not just good vibes. So here's our schematic for today's explainer. We'll start with the dreaded deployment button, cover the 5 risk categories, look at 3 mitigation patterns, build a risk register, automate our preflight checks, and finally, finalize that blueprint. All right, Section 1, the deployment button. We're picking right up from our last lesson on introductory checklists and shifting from abstract goals to detecting concrete threats. Moving on to Section 2, the 5 Solana risk categories. Time to name the unknown. Look, the unknown is always terrifying, but by categorizing it, we take those monsters under the bed and turn them into simple, solvable engineering problems. Basically, every single risk you're going to face falls into one of these 5 buckets: security, operational, dependency, governance, or environmental. Pinning down the category is half the battle, because it tells you exactly who needs to fix it. Let's break down the big ones. First up, security risk. This is the big one, the one that makes the terrifying Twitter headlines. We're talking about compromised keys or unauthorized access to your program's upgrade authority. Imagine for a second a bad actor getting hold of your single upgrade key. No way, right? But if they do, your pristine, heavily audited program gets swapped out for something malicious in seconds. That's a security risk, and it's an absolute showstopper. Next, we've got operational risk. These are your internal process failures. Think about a failed CI/CD test that randomly blocks your build. Or maybe the binary you tested locally doesn't actually match what you're about to push to mainnet. It's kind of like trying to hammer a square peg into a round hole while the whole world is watching you do it. Super frustrating, but entirely preventable with good ops. Then there's dependency risk. This is all about those external systems you're leaning heavily on. Here's the hard truth. Your deployment is literally only as strong as the RPC nodes it relies on. If your RPC provider decides to take a nap right when you're deploying, or your SDK versions clash, well, you're stuck in the mud. You could write the most elegant Solana program ever, but if your external tools fail, the whole shebang fails. Okay, Section 3. 3 mitigation patterns. Let's look at our lines of defense. So, now that we know exactly what we're up against, how do we actually fight back? You basically have 3 main defensive plays here. First, preventive controls. These stop the disaster before it even happens, like using a multisig. Second, detective controls. These surface the issue super fast, like a really loud error script. And third, corrective controls. These help you restore a safe state after a failure, like an emergency rollback plan. Stop, surface, restore. Simple as that. Moving to Section 4, building the risk register. This is where we create your ultimate deployment Bible. All right, here is where we transition from high-level theory to your actual practical blueprint. Notice how we are forcing absolute accountability here. We take an abstract, scary risk, like an RPC node going down. We assign a concrete mitigation to it, like a multi-RPC failover. And most importantly, we give it a human owner, the platform team. See how that works? No confusion, no pointing fingers later, just pure execution. Let's look at this vague to concrete pipeline in action. We start with that terrifying idea, upgrade key compromise. Yikes, right? But then we break it down. Step 2, we verify the upgrade authority with a simple, automated RPC query. Step 3, we confirm the multisig is actually configured correctly. Do you see what we just did? We took a massive, scary vulnerability and turned it into a specific, kind of boring, but completely manageable checklist item. Section 5, automating preflight checks, because machines don't get tired. Look, human checklists are fantastic, but humans get tired, we skip steps, we get distracted. Machines? They don't. Here is an automated Node.js preflight flow we can use as an ultimate stress test. First, compare Genesis hashes across multiple RPCs. Second, securely load the key pair. Third, check the wallet balance for LAN ports. And finally, simulate the transaction. If literally any of these steps fail, the script hard blocks the deploy. I absolutely love this analogy, by the way. Checking your wallet balance before you deploy is exactly like checking your gas tank before driving out to a remote construction site. On Solana, you need enough lamp ports to pay for rent and transaction fees. If you run out of gas halfway through a deployment, you are literally stranded on the side of the blockchain highway. Automate the balance check, and you're golden. Now, step 4 of that script was the transaction simulation. This is absolutely crucial. Running a transaction simulation is just an incredibly powerful detective control. It catches missing accounts or silly serialization errors completely safely. It does a full dry run without broadcasting anything to the actual network. It's basically a crystal ball telling you exactly what would happen, without the permanence of actually committing it to the ledger. All right, Section 6, finalizing the blueprint. Time to balance out the strategy. So we've got our mitigations and our scripts. Now we need to balance automation with good old-fashioned human oversight. On the left side here, we hand all the tedious, repetitive stuff to our automated preflight scripts, the simulations, the balances, the RPC health. But on the right side, those high-stakes, irreversible decisions, like a core program upgrade or hitting the emergency rollback switch, those still absolutely require a human signature. Automation handles the routine, humans handle the impact. Which brings us to our golden rule for today. Hoping for the best is not an engineering strategy. A verified, executable checklist is. By categorizing your risks, assigning them strict mitigations, and giving them clear human owners, you completely strip the emotion and the panic out of deployment day. You're replacing anxiety with verifiable, structured readiness. And that is a real game changer. You've got the theoretical blueprint now, but I want you to ask yourself something. If your mainnet upgrade key was compromised right this very second, exactly how many seconds would it take your team to stop the bleeding? Think about that. Next up, in our track on deploying on Solana, we're going to apply this to your actual environment setup to make sure your answer to that question is a confident 0. Thanks so much for joining this explainer from Forge College. To dive deeper, grab the code and keep building, head over to Forge College. See you in the next one.